I'm worried he's going to try and do the same thing up there. And anyone who even comments on these rapes or comments on the migrant issue is going to be prosecuted. I think he would rather silence people than solve the problem. Have you heard of any of that? Has anyone been charged with a social
Yep.
media crime, Richard?
Now, I'm not sure about social media crime. What I do know is that people have been arrested that were just at the riots. And I heard of a 13-year-old child that was arrested. He wasn't involved in the rioting. He was just basically spectating. He's been arrested and charged with riotous assembly.
Well, we love to cover Ireland because we love to cover the story of mass immigration, and we love the fighting spirit of the Irish. There is a rebellious streak in that people, and they're not taking it lightly. As you know, we were at a march in Dublin a few weeks ago with more than 50,000 people, which is an enormous march, a completely peaceful march. And the flag they flew was that of Ireland. It was interesting to point that out because the flag of the counter-protesters was the Palestinian flag. It's so unusual what's happening. Even more unusual is that the entire political establishment is against the people. The entire political establishment, all the major parties are for mass immigration. All the media is too, at least the regime media. Very interesting to me. But I want to talk to you about Northern Ireland. Remember that the island of Ireland, there are 6 counties that are part of the United Kingdom in the north, and they are largely Protestant. The Republic of Ireland is the southern counties, and it is largely Catholic. So there are some important divides, religious divides, ethnic divides, if you will. But imagine being part of the UK government and choosing to put into Northern Ireland, a place where they've had sectarian differences before, a place where a generation ago there were the Troubles, that is, the IRA and counter paramilitaries and the actual low-grade terrorism for years. Imagine being one of the tall foreheads in London and saying, let's put military-age migrant men from foreign nationalities right in the heart of Northern Ireland. Maybe we could even find a way to stick them between Catholics and Protestants. I mean, if you're talking about a cultural fit, I can't think of a worse place to put them. And indeed, many of the fears came true. As you know, a few weeks ago, several migrants were accused of raping an Irish child. And what was so interesting is that the resulting protests that turned into riots included both Protestants and Catholics who found a common threat, that of mass immigration, larger than their religious and sectarian differences. That's how it looked like to me, at least. I've never been to Northern Ireland, never been to Balamina where the riots were, or even Belfast, but I'm lucky enough to have a friend who lives there, and he joined us on the scene when these riots happened. He's back there with an update. His name is Richard Inman, and we're delighted to talk to him via Zoom. Richard, did I more or less, I mean, you can't sum up Northern Ireland in a paragraph. It's a very complex and rich history, and I'm certainly not partisan one way or the other. I guess my point is, this is a place where ethnicity and nationality and even language are very personal. And things came to blows in that part of the world. So sticking in foreign people who have different culture, religion, language, history seems like a terribly bad idea to me. What do you think, Richard?
Oh, absolutely, Ezra. And you summed it up very well. That's exactly the situation. And we've been warning about this for many, many years. And basically what happened here in Ballymena was there was a very small element of Roma gypsies came into the town and basically set up shop, a mafia that was involved in drug dealing, prostitution, people trafficking, money laundering, a mini criminal empire. And they then started sort of flexing their muscles, and even worse than flexing their muscles, they decided they'd start allegedly, and we've got to say that because of the British legal situation, allegedly, 2 girls were indecently assaulted by these Roma gypsies within the last 2 weeks. Now, since then, there's been a lot happened. Since we last spoke, Ezra, there's been a lot happened.
For sure. You're standing in front of one of the apartments or homes that was considered the home base of some of these migrants. And I understand that things were smashed, vehicles were smashed. It looks like that place was torched. It looks like it's boarded up. Can you describe where you are standing right now, and if indeed anyone is still living in there?
No, there's no one living in it. As far as I know, all the Roma gypsies have now left Balamina. And again, I'm led to believe that that house and some of the other houses that were attacked were occupied by some of this criminal element in the town, and obviously these people that had these allegations hanging over them. And again, I said it last time, but it's worth saying again that in Ireland there is still community, both north and south. Northern Ireland, there's a very, very strong loyalist and Republican community, and in the south, obviously, there's a very, very strong nationalistic, patriotic Irish community. And what happened in Balamina 2 weeks ago has actually brought the two communities together. I've got the footage. I'll send it over to you, Ezra. But we had, walking past us 5 minutes before we came live, we had 200 or 300 women and children walking through this area to show that they're not going to put up with women and children being targeted by anyone, whether they be migrants, whether they be indigenous people. It's not going to happen. And that is, talking to the people of Balamina, they want to say two things to the Lord, because you're the only platform, Ezra, that is giving the people of Balamina a fair crack of the whip, as we say over here. You're the only person that's been truly representing the facts on the ground. And the facts are that what happened in Balamina was a criminal element allegedly attacked two little girls in the most vile manner. And the community said, enough's enough, we're not having it, you're going. And all I'm going to say is, the Roma community, as far as I know, from this area of town that were involved in that criminality, are not here anymore. But what happened then? The BBC, the mainstream media, the Belfast Telegraph, the British press, all of them demonised the people of Balamina as racist bigots. And I've just done an interview with a lady she's from the Czech Republic, so she's a migrant, and she's standing with her friends from Balamina, because she says all they have shown her as a migrant to this country is love and warmth. They've helped her with everything that she's needed since she came over here. She's part of the community love her, and she loves the community. And that's the sort of migration, if we have to have migration, that's the sort of migration we want, where people come and settle and integrate with the community. But when you have things like this Roma Gypsy criminal gang, and you have things like happened in Telford and Rotherham with the Pakistani rape mafia, well, that's when the people rise up and say enough's enough. We're not going to put up with this, and that's really what's happened here. So to pass it off as racist hatred and bigotry is a complete lie and a complete inversion of the truth. And like I say, Ezra, what's happened is brought the two communities together, which is an amazing thing. Wow.
I'm trying to process in my mind why there are so many rallies in Ireland. You were telling me before we turned the cameras on, there's going to be one in Belfast this weekend. There was one in Limerick this past weekend. That's in the Republic of Ireland. I was at Cork a few weeks ago. Like, every little town and city is having rallies. They're often ignored by the mainstream media. We love to cover them, and we try and give them big exposure. But if we're not there, they're really downplayed. And I'm trying to think, why are those rallies happening in Ireland, but not so much in the United Kingdom, other than Northern Ireland, not at all in Canada. I haven't seen anti-immigration rallies in these other places. And my theory is this, Richard, and you tell me what you think. Ireland is still pretty Irish, and Northern Ireland it has a very low migration level. I mean, London, the capital of the UK, is majority minority already, but the Republic of Ireland outside of Dublin and Northern Ireland is still very Irish. And in places like Balamina that are smaller towns, people know each other. So there's a sense of community. And so if you hear a girl got raped, you probably know them, or you want to find out who they are, and you think, oh, that's so-and-so's cousin, or I know their friend. Like, there's a real family feeling. And so it's shocking, and people have blood is thicker than water. And so people come because they can see the changes. Whereas in London, where everything is already atomized and it's a city of strangers, people say, "Oh, well, that's too bad," but they're not taking a stake in the community. What I observed I've told this anecdote many times, but it left a big impression on me. I was in the little village of Dundrum, Ireland, population 200. I just showed up with my cameraman. We were taking some background footage, and someone came up and said, "Who are you guys?" Like they were sort of worried for the community, and they weren't angry. They just wanted to know, who are these strangers? And I guess living in a small town, you lose some privacy, but what you gain in return is a family and a protection. And I sort of loved it. I mean, I'm a big city guy, but I can imagine how wonderful it is to grow up in a place like Dundrum, where no one has to lock their doors and everyone knows each other. And so when you're invaded by hundreds of migrants, in Dundrum, they brought in 240 migrant men in a town of 200. You're a place like Balamina, which is a smaller town. When there's a rape, you know about it. And if you don't, and you have a connection to it, you care, you still care. And maybe you don't in Dublin, although 50,000 care. Anyway, I'm going on at length, but I think the Irish, because they're the indigenous ethnicity, because they've been there for centuries, because they have such a common bond, they care more. And it wounds them when foreign migrants, who are sometimes called invaders because they're pressed into these places. No one invited them in. No one in Balamina asked for migrants. No one in Dundrum asked for migrants. So that's my thesis, Richard. I'm trying to figure it out. Maybe you can correct me or expand or alter my thesis.
You're absolutely right. The difference between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland still has community. And, that's why anyone that comes here and gets involved in the community and joins the community loves the place. And that is the big difference. The UK, sadly, does not have that community. Now, we're trying to build it, the United Kingdom rallies and what we're doing with Tommy Robinson. Obviously, that's a big part of trying to redress that. But what a lot of us here in Northern Ireland believe is that there's a deliberate policy to try and delegitimize, demonize, and destroy that community. And of course, the only way that the mainstream media, the politicians, and even the police force have of doing that is by branding everybody that takes to the streets when children are abused by a criminal mafia that's moved into the town, by classing everybody that's done that as racist. But community is massive in this country. Everybody's families live close to each other. Everybody's together. And what I've seen last week in Balamina, nobody stayed here as long as I have since this story got on. They come in and they go out, so they don't know what's going on. I've taken time to speak to the people. I've taken time to sit and break bread with the people. And what I found is that this has actually brought the community closer together. Now, there are issues I do want to talk about, Ezra, because one of the problems that we've got is a lot of young lads that have got caught up in this rioting are now going to be looking at very, very serious custodial sentences. And the reason they're going to get serious custodial sentences is because what the state and the prosecutors and the police force are going to do is going to tag racism onto the charge of riotous assembly, which will mean they'll get a substantially longer prison sentence. And that's why the media, the politicians and the police are pushing the lie, and it is a lie, that this is a racist mob ransacking migrants' homes, which couldn't be further from the truth. Like I said, there's loads of migrants in this town that have never had any bother from anyone. They integrate, they go to the pubs with people, they go to the churches with people, they go to the coffee shops with people. That's not the issue. It was one very small criminal element that literally totally destabilized this town. And I want to say something else as well, Ezra. I think I sent you the video. I'm not sure if you've seen it. But I got sent footage last week of unmarked white vans driving through the estates of this town and literally dragging children off the street. And I'm not talking about gently saying, get into the van, physically dragging them off the street. Goodness knows what happens to them when they went into the vans. And, if that's not an abuse of the legal process, I don't know what is. If you take a child into a van and you're not the child's parents, in my eyes, that's called kidnapping, Ezra.
So these were police vans, you're saying? They had these sort of snatch raids, I think they were called, where they go out and then they sort of pounce on someone and bundle them out. I guess that's a tactic to avoid, just to pick them off one at a time.
Yeah, But the problem with it is, Ezra, who are they actually picking up? Is it, anyone that's dressed in black? My goodness, I'm dressed in black tonight. Does that mean I'm going to get my collar felt when I try to walk back to my car? It didn't seem to be targeted. It seems to be that they were just grabbing kids, trailing them off the street, trailing them to the back of these vans, and goodness knows what's happened to those children. Have they been charged? Are they remanded? We don't know.
Well, Richard, that makes me think because, and again, I'm trying to keep my jurisdictions straight, but in the United Kingdom proper, so not Northern Ireland, but in the UK, in the city of Southport, where there was a terrorist attack by a convert to Islam whose parents were migrants, and he stabbed a bunch of little girls at a Taylor Swift themed party. That also led to riots, and Keir Starmer called the rioters racist, and he set up 24-hour-a-day courts, which I've never heard of in my life. And he boasted about this. Keir Starmer used to be the chief prosecutor in the UK. So he would, round the clock, and he would just bam, 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 bam. It was like drumhead justice. And all these people, who was he prosecuting? There were some people who were physical. But I'm referring to people who tweeted about it, people who made a Facebook post about it, people who gestured inappropriately. I saw someone was imprisoned for shouting at a dog, shouting at a police dog. I don't believe you should shout at a dog, I suppose, unless you're saying bad dog or something. But that's not a prison term. People were getting 2.5 years in prison for a tweet. I'm worried that is what Keir Starmer, because he's the Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, I'm worried he's going to try and do the same thing up there. And anyone who even comments on these rapes or comments on the migrant issue is going to be prosecuted. I think he would rather silence people than solve the problem. Have you heard of any of that? Has anyone been charged with a social media crime, Richard?
Now, I'm not sure about social media crime. What I do know is that people have been arrested that were just at the riots. And I heard of a 13-year-old child that was arrested. He wasn't involved in the rioting. He was basically spectating. He's been arrested and charged with riotous assembly. And what I've been told, and again, this is anecdotal, but it's from a reliable source, the mother has been charged with child neglect. So the mother and the child from that family have both been arrested in connection with this riot. Kids that have been pulled into these vans, apparently they go straight before the judge. They're getting remanded straight away, locked up straight away. So it's very, very alarming. And I've also been told that the police are starting to look at people's social media, and they're going to be making arrests for people that have just posted on social media, which for the game we're in, Ezra, is very alarming, to say the least.
Well, we know from a report in the Times of London a month ago that every single day in the UK, 30 people have police visit them, 30 a day, for their social media posts. So if that is the baseline, I can only imagine how it's ramped up during a crisis like this in Balamina. Well, Richard, I'm very grateful to you for being on the spot. I've never had the opportunity to go to Northern Ireland. It's not as easy to get to as, say, Dublin or London for us Canadians, but maybe we'll visit one day, and hopefully you'll be in a position to show us around. I get the feeling that if you're a foreign journalist, you're probably going to be looked at with some skepticism, because I think the regime media generally is an enemy of the people. And I wouldn't want myself or any other rebel journalist to be misidentified, say, as with the BBC or something, because, we might get a punch in the nose. But if you were there to keep us on the right path, I'm sure we'd be grateful to you.
Well, Ezra, you'd be surprised how many people know you in Northern Ireland already, and you'd also be surprised how many people know and love Tommy. So if you have anything to do with Tommy, a lot of people will know you anyway. We can make sure that if you come up here, Ezra, you'll be absolutely fine. But one last point on coming across the border. One of the good things about the disastrous fallout from the way the Brexit negotiations went, there is no border in Ireland. So you get to Dublin, you can get to Belfast. It's a 50-mile drive.
Right on. Okay, good. Well, listen, I'm slowly discovering all these interesting places. They're interesting. The people are wonderful. And I keep saying to my Canadian friends, we can learn from other jurisdictions. We can learn what to do right, what to do wrong. We can learn what works and what doesn't work. And I think watching Ireland stand up, there's a fighting spirit there. I don't know if we have it as Canadians, to be honest, Richard. We're a little more passive than I was in Cork the other day, and their motto is the rebel county. I don't know if Canadians are built that way, but there's a lot of lessons we could learn from Ireland, I'm still digesting it in my mind. So I'm grateful to you for helping be our Sherpa, guiding us on this quest for knowledge. Thank you for taking the time, my friend.
It's a pleasure always, Ezra. Pleasure always.
Okay, there he is, Richard Inman, friend of mine. I met him through Tommy Robinson in the UK, so you know he's on the good guy's side. Stay with us. More ahead. Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com.